a channel specifically for questions for this chat, for this program today. And I will be answering questions on there over the next few days. So if anything comes into your mind, if I haven't answered any questions during the talk today, feel free to just pop it into the channel while I'm speaking, and then I will come back to the questions at the end, and hopefully I'll be able to answer all of them. So, okay. So let me know when I'm good to start, Tayeb, and then I will get going. Yes, sure. And if you've already put a question in the chat, I'll wait to answer it at the end. So hopefully everyone who's going to turn up will be there by then, so I don't have to repeat the questions. We have some good questions so far. I'm just having a look at them while we wait. That's great. So first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for attending the masterclass today. It shows that you are already very proactive about your application, and it's really good to see. So even if you're in year 13, year 12, even if you're slightly younger and you're not applying for this year, it is really good to sort of get on this very, very early because obviously applications can be very competitive. So I'll start by introducing myself. So my name's Maya, and I studied architecture at King's College, and I graduated last year. So there was a question in the chat asking me which universities I applied for. So when I was applying to study architecture, I also applied to UCL, Nottingham, Cardiff, and one more. UCL, Cardiff, Sheffield, I think it was. And I did get offers from all of them. So one thing which can be different about applying to Oxbridge, for example, if you're applying to a more niche course, such as archaeology or maybe a joint course or natural sciences, is that your personal statement will still need to target your interests in this specific subject, like natural sciences at Cambridge, whereas at other universities, it has a different name and a slightly different focus. So for example, you might be applying for natural sciences at Cambridge, but applying to chemistry or biology at UCL. So it's important to remember that your personal statement, which forms the majority of your application, caters to all 5 universities that you apply to. So we're going to start by having a look today just at life at Oxbridge, and then we'll move on to having a think to what admissions tutors are looking for. We're going to have a look at your personal statement, how you can improve that and make that as competitive as possible, and the steps you should be taking to sort of craft a very personal and reflective application. And also we'll have a look at the interview itself, which often can be the most daunting part of the process. These are parts of your application as well. You will have your admissions tests. So I can discuss my experience with the architecture admissions tests. And there's also sort of a more behind the scenes in terms of your reference, which will come from your school, which you don't have as much control over. So you really want to be putting as much effort as possible into preparing for your personal statement, admissions tests, and your interview. And we will have a chance for Q&A at the end. So as I said, I studied at King's College, Cambridge. So how the collegiate system works is that you are housed within your college and you also take supervisions within your college groups. So the majority of lectures and any course-related content is organised not by your college, but by your department. But when you have smaller group sessions and more tailored learning with your director of studies, this all takes place within your college. I would say that King's is known for being a bit more left-wing than the other colleges. It is a really nice environment to be in. What informed my choice of college most of all was the fact that they have an art room, and I felt that that was very much in line with my interests, and it was something I used when studying architecture at the college. My advice for choosing a college is I would base it around your own interests. Choose a place where you'd really like to live. There's not a big difference, or there isn't a difference at all between the quality of education provided by each college. So remember that all of your learning is organised by your department. So I would choose maybe based on what sort of accommodation that you'd like to live in. A lot of the older colleges, for example, King's, Christ's and Corpus Christi, they're in the middle of town and they are some of the oldest accommodations, but it means that you might not have an ensuite bathroom, and if you want sort of a very modern space, you might look for colleges which are a bit further away, such as Churchill or Girton, which give you sort of a more modern feel and have double glazing, which is always good in the winter. And also have a think about what facilities you would like to be using in your free time, whether you want to live in catered accommodation or whether you want to be part of a sports team, and whether you would really enjoy using the college football, rugby grounds. Some colleges even have pools. Girton College has an indoor pool. Things like that, I think, should factor into your choice of college. The advice I got when I attended a personal statement masterclass run by Cambridge itself was not to actually do an open application, because I think it's just the unknown. I think you should just maybe just pick a college. You don't need to spend too much time looking if you sort of can't really make your mind up, but maybe just choose a college. The chances are you will get pulled anyway, which means that your application will be reconsidered amongst other colleges, which doesn't affect your chances. It is a good thing to be pulled. So you might not actually end up where you first applied. So these are some images. You have the dining hall in the bottom right-hand corner, which formed a really big part of my first year at Cambridge. And it really was a social hub for me to meet fellow first-year undergraduates. And it was a chance to sort of discuss your experience at supervisions, and it really is an academic community formed within these colleges. So other universities, you might have the option of living at home. Cambridge doesn't really offer that option because they really believe in this sort of the benefit of the academic life created within a college. And I think it is something I would recommend most definitely. And it is what sets Cambridge apart from other universities. So Oxford and Cambridge combined. Yes, sure. Um, okay, hopefully it's working now. Let me know if you have any other notifications popping up. Okay. So we've had a look at the academic life within the college. I'm sure you're obviously wondering about the work-life balance at Cambridge. I know that was a big question I had before applying. There is a very wide range of sports and societies and clubs you can get involved with, and I do really recommend you do so. You'll meet a lot of new people, and it will be a really good stress relief for you. So you will have societies organised at university level. So, for example, some of the university sports, but you also have societies at a college level. So these can be a bit more informal. For example, I played college badminton. It was not very competitive at all. It was whoever wanted to play could turn up, and that suited me. So I'm sort of a novice badminton player. But if you do also want to get into the really competitive side of things, there's space for people across all levels. So it is a really inclusive space. Another thing which sets Oxbridge apart, I would say, are the travel grants, which are also available for students. So some of these are academic, some of these are more recreational. So I would maybe do your research before applying to a college. I know colleges such as John's can be quite notorious for offering very good travel grants. So maybe have a look if traveling is something you're interested in. For example, I took part in the Harbin Festival of Ice with the Cambridge Department of Architecture and Engineering. So the picture on the top right-hand corner is from that trip, and the funding from this came from King's College. So it was very generous funding, and I wouldn't have been able to attend the trip without it. So there is support for you available in all areas. There was a question in the chat which was based on support from colleges. So you have, you'll always have a form of pastoral support within your college. I did reach out quite a few times, and I found it really beneficial. There is also a university-wide counselling service, which I also made use of. So there are support levels available on different tiers. I don't know how they would compare across colleges. I think you would probably need to visit the websites of each of the colleges to see how much support they offer. But I think generally speaking, the pastoral support is definitely there, and most people do use it because it is sort of a really great resource. So I did feel very much as if my academic needs were being supported at Cambridge, as well as my pastoral needs. So, for example, I went to my tutor just to discuss how I was coping in terms of COVID, the lockdowns, and this was completely separate to how my dissertation was going, which was really beneficial. So if we move on to the more technical parts of the application, the key question, what are Oxbridge looking for? So I took some time thinking about this, and I think for me, it really distilled down into 2 points as for me when I was applying as a 17-year-old and what aspects for my application stood out. So admissions tutors are looking for someone who is an independent learner. And they're also looking for someone who has the ability or the interest in engaging with things critically. So often these are skills which are not necessarily promoted at school. your work at school might be very much based on the textbook, and it's about sort of very much gearing your ideas and learning towards a set of exams, and that's how you would mark success. But when it comes to university level, especially in the Cambridge supervision, they're looking for people who are able to sort of push past what they're taught and really question the authors they're reading and why these pieces are being written. I would also just say, I know my advice, obviously having studied architecture, might be slightly more geared to a humanities audience. But if you're on the STEM side, for example, if you're looking to study maths, if you do have any questions which you feel like I haven't answered, do pop it in the chat anyway, and I'll see what I can do. So if we're looking for an independent learner, what does this mean? So we're looking for someone who's very proactive outside of their classes. So not only engaging with maybe your biology syllabus, learning about sort of stem cells, going beyond this. So you've learned about stem cells in your classes. Maybe you've signed up for a magazine subscription. Maybe you've gone a bit further and read a book about epigenetics, and then you've become really interested in this, and then you've decided to do your EPQ on this whole area. So it's about demonstrating your engagement of the subject outside of the classroom. So you can use your topics and ideas generated in the classroom as a starting point, but your personal statement and your application should reflect how you've taken these interests further. You've taken these ideas and expanded and really sought to sort of delve further into the subject and ask questions as to why these things take place. This doesn't mean knowing all of the answers. I think you'll soon realize when you do enter Oxbridge, you really don't know everything, and you're working with academics who really are experts in their field. They've been working in these areas for 20, 30, 40 years of their life. So they're not looking for people who have read every book there is on stem cells. They're looking for how you've really maybe engaged with one piece of reading, how you've thought about it critically, and you've formed your own opinions on this subject. In terms of critical thinking, this really comes down to questioning what you're reading. It's, for example, the architecture reading list, which we were given before starting. I didn't really read any of the books on there, and that was the focus of a lot of our first year. But as soon as we started and going into our second year, we were told, so this might be the official history, but in second year, we're going to sort of break down, why is this the official history? What is wrong with this official history, and what are the limitations of the books you're actually reading? So your application can reflect that. Don't go into the Oxbridge interviews or personal statements with a very fixed idea with what Oxbridge are looking for, because I found that you might surprise yourself. It's about sort of thinking beyond the box, which really makes you stand out in these things. So yeah, sure. Is my other noises in the background still an issue? Yeah, sure. Okay. So now let's have a look at how you would go about starting the personal statement. So I would say this is, it can be quite a daunting piece of writing. I think it's around 47 lines, so it's one A4 page typed up. So it's not very long. So you do need to be very succinct in what you're writing. So this does mean you need to do at least a few drafts to really get your ideas down on one page and have them as clear and as strong as possible. So the best piece of advice I received about my personal statement was that you want it to be 95% academic. I would even say 99% academic. I think You might often have been told at every point in your life that you always need to have some hobbies on there. You need to discuss what you do in your free time, whether you are part of a running club, things like that. I think that's great for your CV, but this is a different type of document. So I've put here that your hobbies and your sports clubs should be maybe only 5% of your application. I would say 3 to 5 lines at the very end. I think mine was 3, and it really is something you just talk about your Duke of Edinburgh award at the very end, just in a line, and you're not going to depth about it. Your personal statement should be all about your supercurricular activities. So what I mean by this is how you've explored your subject outside of the classroom, as I referred to in the previous slide. That's what we're really talking about here. So you might ask, where do I begin with this task? And so for me, for example, I was interested in architecture, and a big part of my application was actually doing some work experience in this field. Architecture is obviously a very vocational subject, and if you're doing medicine, I think even if you're looking to study computer science, maybe doing some work experience and coding for a startup website can be really helpful, and you can talk about this. And the next resource I'm going to mention are quests, which I'm sure you've sort of come across and are familiar with already, but these are a real lifesaver, I would say. I really wish they were around when I was applying. They're sort of a very curated resource of lots of different material which can generate ideas and which you can discuss in your personal statement. So these are all sort of free resources. So we're talking about videos, podcasts, and wider reading all around your subject. So this is really helpful. So for example, if we go back to the example of stem cells, if you have a look on the biology quests, you might find some really interesting podcasts about stem cells and what's the future of AI and stem cells and all of these kind of things, and more sort of ethical debates, and you can sort of really discuss your interest in the ethics behind these issues. And I think it is just very interesting. And it also gives you the opportunity to see how interested you are in this subject. Because if you're not really willing to do the wider reading, is it the best subject for you to study at university? Maybe not, if you're not as interested. So quests, you can obviously access immediately. You have summer schools. You might have to do a bit more research about these. With architecture, I think some architecture firms might do them, some architecture firms, sorry, and some architecture schools. So have a look. If you are based in London, there might be some courses online. So for example, MOOCs are often a good thing. Maybe Harvard Business School, Coursera, lots of different things if you're looking at coding or you want to improve your area of maths in a certain area. When I talk about hobbies, it is okay to talk about societies, but make sure they're very relevant to your course. If you love running and you mentioned it, make sure it's in relation to that's because you have an interest in medicine and the human body and you're approaching it from an academic, technical perspective. That's how I would link your hobbies in. If you did your Duke of Edinburgh and you're looking to study geography, maybe there's a really clear link there because you're talking about maps. Maybe you could talk about urban planning, something like that. But we're not necessarily this isn't really the place for you to be talking about your team building skills. Depending on the course, I think it is a case-by-case basis, but I wouldn't say my interpersonal skills played a strong role in my personal statement. It's all about your academic interests, which you might have to, it might take some time to sort of get used to doing this. Have a look online. There might be some Oxbridge masterclasses as well. So I think now's the time to really sort of keep your eyes and ears on the ground, to look for things, for material you can sort of engage with, and then you can discuss in your personal statement. So just to go back to the quests, these are a quick example of what Questa looks like. There is a very wide range of subjects, and it's really good targeting Oxbridge. So some courses, once again, archaeology, not all universities offer this, or even classics, but Questa's got all of the resources very much tailored to this. and I can recommend this because I did curate some of the lists myself. So if we're just going to summarize what I covered about the personal statement, so what I would do is you need to give an example of an experience, so your work experience or the debate you watched on stem cells, and you need to explain your learning from it. It's not enough just listing all of the Questa lists you've read, all of the videos you've watched. You need to talk about your learning, what your reflections are, and how you've built upon them. So this is the part of your application, your personal statement, which will take the most time. So I would sit down with your CV and a list of experiences. So use them in combination, and then take the time to sort of draft and build a paragraph explaining your learning from this. You could give it to someone afterwards to check and do a few drafts of, but it is a document which does require redrafting, and there is a sort of a level of reflection required from this. And then soon, I think once you've done that, you will begin to group your interests into larger paragraphs. So for example, I found that there was a common theme of architecture and nature, which I was really interested in, and also sustainability. So you can begin to create a really nice flow within your personal statement. Even though I might have thought that my interests at the beginning within architecture were very varied, you can begin to link things across, which is really nice. Another thing to say, admissions tutors are looking for a long-term interest in your subject. So I'm not talking about a long-term interest since childhood, but maybe I would say over the last year, the last 6 months to a year, maybe 2 years, is when you really want to start thinking about your subject. I know maybe some of you might be thinking, oh no, I've only decided what I want to do really recently, but maybe just don't say that. But you want to show an interest in your subject which has lasted longer than 2 weeks. So maybe say, oh, I've signed up to this magazine subscription for the last 8 months, and I really enjoyed starting with this interest, and then it's developed to this point. So it really shows admissions tutors that you have a sustained level of interest, which will sort of last you through the 3 or 4 years you're doing your course. I know personal statements can be sort of quite daunting. I would just make it very clear that personal statements are always checked for plagiarism. So I wouldn't base your personal statement off an older brother's or a cousin's or even an ex-Oxbridge applicant's. I would remember you can sort of read through them, but make sure when you're writing it, it's very much based around yourself, your own ideas, because yes, the plagiarism checker is very rigorous. Avoid cliches. I think that's just try to be as original as possible. So for myself, actually didn't really look at any model personal statements beforehand. There isn't a model personal statement. You really want yours to be as different as possible. You don't want it to be the same as the person applying to dentistry in the year above, who also happens to be your cousin, that sort of thing. So when I talk about cliches, I have some here. UCAS actually make a list, I think, of the 10 most common phrases from personal statements. So from a young age, I've always been interested in medicine, or I've always been passionate about. I think the word passionate probably crops up in every personal statement. So if you can, try to avoid it. Just find another way of rephrasing it, just to make the admissions tutors' lives more interesting. And I would definitely avoid saying from a young age, because your interest in medicine from 5 years old to your interest in medicine as a 17-year-old is going to be very different. And obviously, it's going to be a lot more sophisticated at 17. So I would avoid saying you're interested in anything since childhood, because it's not sort of the level of studying at degree level. Don't leave your personal statement to the last minute. Oxbridge applications obviously are sent off a lot earlier. I think it's probably mid-October, and your school might require more time to sort of go through the applications and draft references and do all of the spell checking. So work with your teachers on this one. Start writing now if you haven't already, so you can do a few drafts before you go back to school, and then you're ready to sort of show whoever it is you're asking for feedback, so you don't do this in a rush. You want it to be very well thought through, and also don't sort of allude to knowing more than you actually do. Definitely don't lie about anything, especially when you go to interview, because it will become very clear very quickly, because once again, you're dealing with experts in your field. You're not really being expected to know everything. So talk about the things you've done, don't talk about things you haven't done. So we have about 4 minutes. So now if we have a think about the interview. So this obviously follows on from your personal statement. So I'm going to go slightly quicker through this. So the interview is a chance for you to have a conversation with an academic in your field. I like to think of it as a conversation because it does have a conversational feel. They don't have a set list of questions they're testing you against. It's designed to be a space for you to sort of think out loud. They want to see your thought process, how you engage with new material. I think that's really important. Once again, you're not expected to know everything, and there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer about this. I think what often surprises people when I say that you shouldn't be afraid to disagree with your interviewer. They're not looking for someone who goes in and sort of can't think for themselves. I did feel like I was almost pushing my interviewer a bit when I would sort of voice my opinions about certain things, but I think sometimes they do that to test you. They really want to see whether you can justify yourself when you make certain claims. And I think my interviewer was definitely pushing me to do that. And I walked away thinking, oh no, like, I don't think I got it. I don't think it went very well. But that was not the case. I think it was probably a good quality that I was able to sort of really justify any of the opinions I'm putting forward, even if you think it's different to their own. So I think trust in all of the work you've done leading up to the interview. So you definitely want to show an awareness of current events related to your field. For example, if you're applying to architecture, make sure you know something about affordable housing, sustainability, life post-COVID. I think some things are just general knowledge, but equally, if you're applying to study maybe HSPS or a humanities or politics subject, and you haven't really been keeping up with the conservative debates on TV, maybe it shows something about your level of interest and how much time you're willing to put into your subject. Draw from your wider reading, which you've already done, so all of the quests you've read. It's completely okay to reference these things. The interview can be very much based around your personal statement, or it can be based on sort of an image they put in front of you or a document. It can also be based on essays you've submitted previously or admission tests you've done on the day. So anything you've written about or submitted as part of your application, be prepared to talk about it. So this is when, obviously, if you've fabricated anything, you've made anything up, this will all come out in the interview. So just use it as an opportunity to talk around your personal statement, really. And it's not as intimidating. And don't say, I don't know. Sort of, they really want you to sort of talk through things and sort of give things a go. I think if you're doing a STEM subject, you're more likely to be asked to be given a question, and they want to see how you would work through it and piece together information. So it's not necessarily a discussion based, but once again, it will be sort of content or maths, which is beyond the A-level syllabus. And they know that. They know what level you're currently at school. Okay, so I think I did manage to make it in time for the 30 minutes. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. So if I go to my interview experience, I did 2 interviews on the day. They were both half an hour with different interviewers, and I did 2 admissions tests on the day. It would vary depending on your course. Some courses will ask you to do a pre-admissions test. For example, STEP, I think economics might as well. And my admissions tests were a drawing task, which was 30 minutes, and a writing task, which was 30 minutes. Okay, so that's my 30-minute presentation finished. So I'm going to go over to the channel. So if you do have any questions for me. Okay, so Tayeb, should I go ahead with just selecting a question, or do you want to sort of point out any? Whichever one. Okay. Okay, sure. So our first one was looking at specific grades. I would say contacted an admissions tutor directly for this, maybe from King's or anyone, because they will know exactly what the requirements are. But it's important to remember that Cambridge will look at your application as a whole. So, for example, if everyone at your school also did 8 GCSEs, they will see, okay, well, she's in line with that sort of standard, and that's okay. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. Maybe just get in touch and apply anyway. Tips: what would you advise doing for the architecture pre-interview assessment? So when I applied to King's, I didn't do a pre-interview assessment. There was an on-the-day assessment. So where I did my drawing task and the essay. I would go through the quests or just read articles, videos, anything around your interest, Guardian, whatever you find interesting. So you have things to talk about. You have interests, you have opinions. That's really important. What was the hardest thing about getting into Cambridge? I think the hardest thing actually was you might have a level of imposter syndrome going into it, which I really did. So it's not as intimidating as it seems. Everyone who you meet on the interview process, like even once you're inside, like everyone wants you to do well. You will be pushed, you will be challenged, but it is really, really rewarding. And if you're stuck, just always ask questions. Yeah, I would just say just focus on your own interests and take it from there. I've answered the question on support. Which college really has the best bar? I think Jesus Bar is quite nice. Clare, Sellers are really good. Selwyn has the best looking bar, I would say. I think those are good ones. And I know Girton has a new bar, but I think you just need to try a few and see what you like. Grades and GCSEs, do you need? Obviously, GCSE grades, you're kind of looking towards the upper end, but you don't need a straight row of A stars. A-level grades are important. But you should be sort of someone who is quite academic and enjoys learning, and they will look at your grades in comparison to the rest of your school. So, for example, if you went to a state school and obviously not performing as well as the local private school, they take those things into account. What do you suggest including in the architecture portfolio and how should it be presented? I would say always include work from your sketchbook, your personal sketchbook, include some gallery visits, obviously include things from your A-level coursework, your main design projects. Also include work part of the design process. So maybe some pieces aren't finished, but you think are really interesting. I can give you more advice. I'll probably write that on this chat because it's more specific. Can I include my own research in my personal statement? Yes. That's very impressive that you're doing your own research. My form tutor says I should include a section about my A-level options on my personal statement. Is this necessary? I would say no, because you have to fill out this information on UCAS anyway. So I wouldn't say, hi, my name is I'm studying art, biology, and chemistry, because the other part of your application already says that. If you want to say, so when I was studying X topic in chemistry, I that's more interesting, but don't waste word space by, they already know that you've studied chemistry. What work experience did I do? I did work experience at my local council in the urban planning department. They were quite accommodating of me. So maybe reach out to local councils. And then from there, I met an architecture firm. I was quite lucky. So then I did work experience with 2 architecture firms from there. And I think generally people are quite nice to prospective applicants. So maybe just send a bunch of emails and try to sort of build a network and get on LinkedIn and maybe message a few people if you're looking for work experience. Do you have any tips for choosing a teacher as a reference? I would maybe go to the teacher, for example, if you're looking to study chemistry, go to your chemistry teacher. But also remember that you can't write anything bad on a reference. So they can't sort of write down all of the times you were late on your reference. But do keep in mind that your teachers will be your references, so maybe start trying to make a good impression now. Main piece of advice that I wish I'd had for your application. I think I've included all of the pieces of advice. Yeah, it's just the main one of it's 95% academic. It's not a CV. It's all about your academic interests. And it was really drilled into me. It's just don't talk about, I wanted to do this since childhood. Can you make up stuff during your interview? No. I mean, I wouldn't suddenly start producing work experiences because I think they can check all of these things. And obviously, I think you do signs. I mean, any interview, I don't think you should lie. But if you're talking about making up some mathematical concepts, because they will be able to see past that, but no, don't lie. You'll get caught out, and it's not sort of a good work ethic to have. Should you apply to a specific college or apply for all? I would say apply to a specific college. You might get pulled, but at least you've sort of made a choice. Because if you do an open application, you might get one which is maybe a bit far away or has really old accommodation, which you don't like. Is it possible for someone to get into uni without having much of a social life? I don't think I had a massive social life. Oh no, to get by in uni. I think it depends how you define social life. Maybe you're not a massive party goer, but then neither am I. And I think you will find people who kind of like, I don't know, maybe just watching movies or like going to an art gallery with you. I think the college environment really fosters support in that way, and you might find that you meet some people who are really, really similar to you. So it might surprise you. So I think your social life with your friends are really important in getting you through Cambridge. Definitely. I would say give it a go. Try a new society. How long was my work experience? 1 to 2 weeks, I believe. And I think I went back the following year. I would say try to get as many work experiences as possible, just for your own sake, because you'll get to see whether you like working in that environment. And it's always interesting. I always think it's really interesting to do. You'll meet people. I would say what I should have done is created a LinkedIn and added everyone I met on that work experience. So if you have work experience, get on your LinkedIn as well. Is it okay to include stuff that isn't related to the course you're applying for in your personal statement? Do you have a more specific example, and why would you want to do it? Is it, I would say keep it as focused the course you're applying for as possible. Maybe if you want to bring in sort of an example of teamwork. I say I've done. An IT company. Yep. So think about. I think there is a way for you to make it link. Just try to make it link to your course. Maybe you really like working on business projects or problem solving, and do keep it very focused on mechanical engineering. Say you picked up skills in your work experience which really helped you on this other mechanical engineering project. You don't want it to get to the point where an admissions tutor sits back and asks, okay, but so why aren't you applying for IT, or something like that. Tips for finding relevant work experience. I started from my local council. I think they do have to like be quite supportive of 16 or 17-year-olds applying. Also reach out to family and friends, that network. You can try cold calling people as well. You might get some responses. I think LinkedIn is a really good tool. I wasn't big on it when I was applying, but you should go on LinkedIn or just message some people. I mean, if you don't ask for work experience, you don't get it. So put yourself out there. Go to different workshops in the city. For example, you can even go to some online lectures. Maybe you can message people after, like I'm really interested in, maybe even ask for some work shadowing. It might be easier for the company, but don't get turned down by the first rejection. Did I do DFE, and do you think it's beneficial at all? I did do DFE. I loved my DFE. It was not a big part of my personal statement, but I do think DFE is really good. I couldn't find a way to make it link. So, for example, my DFE is on my CV, and I can talk about it there. But for me, for my personal statement, I didn't think it was that relevant. I can do a few more minutes of questions. Um, is it worth doing an EPQ? I think look at the UCAS points required. Last time I remember that Cambridge go by grades, not EPQ, UCAS points. But I think an EPQ can always be beneficial. I would email an admissions tutor to check. Are tutors open to receiving emails from prospective students? Admissions tutors are very well versed in answering your questions. So, for example, if you have a very specific question about your own application, such as EPQ, you can ask them. Do you get more chances to get into Cambridge if you've participated to your summer schools? It's not a guaranteed better chance that you'll get in. I think you'll have the same chance as anyone else, but I think it's good that you have been. I think some things it's worth remembering that they might be quite expensive to get onto or hard to access. So it's not people don't have equal access to these resources. So I would keep that in mind. Did you want? When did I decide on architecture? I would say I decided in year 12 at some point. So not GCSE, I think early in year 12. I went to some personal statement talks early in year 12, and they told me you want to be doing things all throughout year 12. So just testing some stuff out, trying different work experiences, so you can make a decision. And I think by year 12 summer, I'd made my mind up, and then I could go into year 13 or end of the summer, early year 13, write my personal statement. And I already had built up my bank of experiences. I was also considering maybe biochemistry and things like that. I hadn't really made up my mind, but I think the more sort of master classes and online courses you do, you build up your experiences, and it's good to keep your options open. I don't think you only do 4 A levels if it's required. I didn't do 4 A levels, and it is a lot of work. So maybe 3 A levels and EPQ is better, but email an admissions tutor. It depends if you're doing further maths. I think my school, if you did further maths, you had to do 4 A levels, because if you apply elsewhere, some universities don't count further maths as a separate A level. My favourite part of my architecture course was the history and theory. It was very, very interesting. Yes, Freddie Robs gave a very good response to that question. So my favourite part of the architecture course was the history and theory lectures. Learning about decolonizing architecture and sort of breaking down sort of the Western canon of architecture, and learning sort of more about informal settlements and things like that. It's very, very interesting. It was an area my director studies specialised in. So I did A levels in biology, chemistry, and art. It was not a very typical selection. I think a lot of the architects often have maths and physics, and they do art, but I think architecture doesn't really specify. It doesn't specify which A levels you need. Do universities help you find a job after you graduate? Depends on the university, depends on your field. The Cambridge Architecture Department does do a careers day, but I think it's good to sort of do your own research on that kind of thing as well. Okay, so we're sort of done maybe 15 minutes or so of questions. So should I keep going, Tayab, or do you think we'll sort of wrap up here and then I can answer questions afterwards and over the next few days? Thanks, everyone.